My fiancé's ex called his mom crying about our engagement, blocked only me on Instagram, and I met her at a mutual friend's wedding. Here's how I kept my peace. The ceiling above me has become a repository for my thoughts. It's a blank, white, slightly textured canvas, and in the 3 a.m. stillness of our apartment, it's the only thing willing to listen. Alex is asleep beside me, his breathing a deep and steady rhythm that should be comforting. Tonight, it feels like the ticking of a clock, measuring the hours since my future mother-in-law, Carol, dropped a small, perfectly polished grenade into the quiet garden of my mind. It started, as these things often do, with a phone call. I was chopping vegetables for dinner last night, the rhythmic thump-thump-thump of the knife on the cutting board a meditation of its own. Alex was on his way home from work. My phone buzzed on the counter, flashing Carol. I smiled, wiping my hands on a dish towel before answering. "Hi, Carol. How are you?" "Chloe, darling. I'm alright. Is Alex with you?" Her voice was measured. It had a careful quality to it, like she was carrying a full glass of water across a wobbly floor. "Not yet. He should be home in about 20 minutes. Everything okay?" A pause, the sound of a deep, world-weary sigh. Yes, everything is fine. I had a rather interesting phone call today, and I suppose I felt you should know. This is the moment. The pin being pulled. You never hear it at the time, of course. You only recognize the sound in retrospect, playing it over and over again in the dark. "Oh," I said, my voice still light, oblivious. I leaned against the counter, picturing her in her immaculate kitchen, a floral apron probably tied neatly around her waist. "It was Sarah," she said. The name landed in the air between us, heavy and solid. Sarah, the ex, the 7-year girlfriend, the ghost of relationship past. I didn't say anything, just made a small, encouraging noise in my throat. I knew this was a test. Or not a test, precisely, but a delicate moment. I am the new addition to a family that had a different woman at their table for nearly a decade of holidays, birthdays, and Sunday dinners. I have always been careful to tread lightly around her memory, to be respectful of the history without being intimidated by it. "She heard about the engagement," Carol continued. "From one of the cousins, I think. Maria. You know how she is with Facebook." I did. Maria was a prolific sharer. Our engagement photo, the one where Alex is lifting me up on the beach and I'm laughing so hard my eyes are scrunched shut, had probably been seen by half the state by now. "She called me. Crying," Carol said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Absolutely beside herself, the poor thing. The knife in my hand, which I had picked up again to dice an onion, stilled. The poor thing felt like a small, sharp pebble flicked against my cheek. She said she always thought, in the back of her mind, that Alex would come back to her, that what they had was foundational. Her word. She said she knows it's silly, but in her heart of hearts, she just believed they'd find their way back. And she told me that she still sees me as a mother, that losing our family is like losing a part of herself all over again. I could hear the rehearsed sympathy in Carol's voice. She was relaying a tragedy, and she was playing her part beautifully. My own role, I realized, was to be the gracious, understanding audience. "Wow," I managed. "That's a lot." "It is," she agreed. "And the strangest part, Chloe, is that she said she's happy. She's been with this new fellow, Mark, for about 2 years. A really good man," she said. "Very stable, very kind. But then she said, and this is what got me, she said, he's a good man, Carol. He's just not my Alex." My Alex. The words echoed in the sterile silence of my kitchen. Possessive, defiant, an assertion of a claim that had expired 4 years ago. The onion on the cutting board started to make my eyes water, a convenient physical manifestation of the sting I felt inside. I didn't know what to say. "Thank you for telling me this," felt hollow. "I'm sorry she's hurting," felt like a lie. So I settled for a neutral. I can imagine that would be difficult to hear. This, apparently, was the right response. It unlocked the second part of Carol's pre-planned speech, the reassurance phase. "Of course, darling," I told her that Alex is a grown man and has made his choice, and that he is deliriously happy with you. Which he is. "Oh, Chloe, he is. I wanted to tell you this because I believe in transparency, but I also want you to know it doesn't change a thing. In fact," she leaned into the phone, her voice dropping again, "all of his friends have told me, privately, that they never really clicked with her. They thought she was a bit high-strung, but they adore you. They say you're like a breath of fresh air for him. Even his cousins, Maria included, have all said they've never, ever seen him smile the way he does when he's with you. He's just lighter." It was a perfectly executed maneuver. A little spoonful of poison followed by a large dose of antidote. She was a darling girl who saw me as a mother, but his friends didn't like her and he's happier with you. A neat little package of emotional whiplash, tied with a bow of reassurance. I knew she was trying to soften the blow, to manage my reaction, to be a good future mother-in-law. But the two halves of her story didn't cancel each other out. They just sat there, side by side, creating a dissonance that was now vibrating under my skin. "Thank you for telling me, Carol," I said, "and I meant it. I think I appreciate you being open with me. Of course, darling. You're family now. I'll see you Sunday for dinner? We'll be there. We hung up, and I stood in the quiet of my kitchen, the half-chopped vegetables forgotten on the board. I felt like I'd been handed a piece of a puzzle I never wanted to solve. It has nothing to do with me, I told myself. This is her grief, her baggage, her issue. But that's the thing about baggage. When someone drops it at your feet, you can't help but look inside. And now, here I am, staring at the ceiling, while the man at the center of this quiet storm sleeps peacefully. My Alex, as Sarah had called him. The logical part of my brain, the part that runs my life and pays my bills on time, has everything sorted out. Alex dated Sarah for 7 years, from the time they were 20 until they were 27. A lifetime. In those formative years, they grew up together, their families intertwined. Of course she's enmeshed. Of course a piece of her heart will always reside in the house he grew up in. But the breakup, that's the key. Alex told me the whole story one night a few months into our relationship. We were sitting on my balcony, sharing a bottle of wine, the city lights twinkling below us. It was that stage of a new relationship where you excavate the past, gently, looking for fault lines, for foundational cracks, for the things that made the other person who they are. It ended because she fell for someone else, he'd said, his voice devoid of bitterness, just stating a fact. He swirled the red wine in his glass, watching the liquid cling to the sides. She was on a work trip, met a guy. She said it was just a feeling, an intense connection. She came back and told me she'd kissed him. To her credit, she was honest about it. What did you do? I'd asked, my heart aching for the 27-year-old version of him. I ended it, he said simply. For me, that was a line. It wasn't just the kiss. It was the fact that she had allowed herself to get to a place where that was possible. The trust was gone. You can't build a life on that. He told me she'd been devastated by his finality. She thought they could work through it. She'd dated the other guy for a few months, it fizzled, and then she spent the better part of a year trying to get Alex back. Texts, long, pleading emails, showing up at his favorite coffee shop. But he was resolute. I was done, he told me, looking at me with an intensity that made my breath catch. Even if you and I had never met, I would never have gone back to her. That chapter was closed. I spent 4 years on my own after that, Chloe. I wasn't waiting for her. I was waiting for, well, I was waiting for you, I guess. I just didn't know it yet. It was one of the most romantic and reassuring things anyone had ever said to me. It wasn't just words, it was backed up by 4 years of verifiable singlehood, 4 years of him rebuilding his life, on his own terms. He didn't jump into a new relationship. He healed. He grew. The man I met in 2024 was not a man on the rebound. He was a man who knew exactly what he wanted. And he wanted me. I believe him. I trust him. My unease has absolutely nothing to do with Alex. It has everything to do with the ghost. After dinner last night, after I'd told Alex about the call and he'd wrapped me in his arms, swearing that Sarah was a part of his past and I was his entire future, I did something I knew I shouldn't. I opened Instagram. I typed her name into the search bar, Sarah Jenkins. Her profile, which I had admittedly glanced at once or twice in a moment of idle curiosity months ago, was now private. Not just private, a new message had appeared under her name. You can't see their photos or videos because they've blocked you. Blocked me. The air went out of my lungs. It was such a small, petty, modern gesture, but it felt so deeply personal. She hadn't blocked Alex. She hadn't blocked his mother, his cousins, his sister. She still followed all of them, a silent digital spectator in the life of the family she still claimed as her own. She had only blocked me, the woman who was marrying the man she couldn't have. It was a declaration of war fought with a single click, a digital drawing of a line in the sand. You are not welcome here. This territory is mine to observe. It was a way of making me invisible, of pretending I didn't exist, while she maintained her foothold in his world. And that's what's spinning in my head as I lie here in the dark. It's the audacity, the sheer, unadulterated gall of a woman who is, by her own admission, in a happy, 2-year relationship, to call her ex-boyfriend's mother in a fit of manufactured grief over our engagement, to cry about losing a family she voluntarily forfeited when she kissed another man, to position herself as the victim, the tragic heroine in a love story that ended because of her choices. And then, to follow it up with such a targeted, juvenile social media snub. It's the combination of the high drama and the low blow that's so unsettling. It's a performance. All of it. The weeping phone call, the carefully worded lament about her Alex, the strategic Instagram block. She's creating a narrative where she is the one who was wronged, the one who is still pining away, the great lost love. And she's making sure the family, and by extension, me, are her audience. She's not a threat to my relationship. I know that in my bones. Alex is a fortress, and the door to his past with her is locked, barred, and cemented over. But she is a threat to my peace. Because in 3 weeks, we have to go to our friends Mike and Jess's wedding. Mike was Alex's college roommate. Jess was Sarah's childhood friend. They are a mutual friend group couple, a relic from the 7-year dynasty. Sarah will be there, with Mark, her good man. And I will have to see her. I will have to stand in the same room, breathe the same champagne-scented air, and look at the woman who called my future mother-in-law crying about my engagement. The woman who blocked me on Instagram. The woman who, in some small delusional corner of her mind, still believes the man sleeping next to me belongs to her. She'll probably just ignore me. That seems to be her MO: invisibility. Pretend I don't exist, but I'll know. I'll be watching her watch Alex. I'll be hyper-aware of her every move, her every whispered conversation with a mutual friend, and I'll know that she is performing her tragedy for anyone who will watch. And that is what's so unsettling. It's the knowledge that for one night, I will have to share a space with the ghost, and she's doing everything in her power to prove she's not a ghost at all. She wants us all to think she's still flesh and blood. The week that followed was a strange tightrope walk between the solid reality of my life with Alex and the shadowy world of his past. On the surface, everything was perfect. We spent Tuesday evening debating wedding venues, laughing over brochures for places that were either absurdly expensive or hilariously tacky. We settled on a beautiful old winery with rolling hills, and the act of putting down the deposit felt like planting a flag, claiming our future. Alex was a rock. After my initial confession of unease the night of Carol's call, he was impeccably attentive. He didn't dismiss my feelings or tell me I was being silly. He listened. He held my hand and said, "I'm sorry you have to deal with this. Her actions are about her and her own issues, and they have nothing to do with us. But I know it's still weird, and I'm sorry." He suggested we unfollow anyone who made us feel uncomfortable on social media. "Let's just curate our own happiness," he'd said with a smile. "No ghosts allowed." I loved him for that, but it wasn't that simple. I couldn't just block out the world. The world was coming to us, in the form of a wedding invitation stuck to our fridge with a magnet shaped like a slice of pizza. My unease manifested in small, insidious ways. I found myself scrolling through the tagged photos of his family members on Instagram. It was a form of self-flagellation, a digital rabbit hole I knew I shouldn't go down. And there she was, Sarah, a ghost in the machine. There she was in a group photo from his cousin Maria's baby shower last year, smiling, arm in arm with Alex's sister, Lisa. There she was in a comment on Carol's picture of her prize-winning roses from 2 months ago. "They're beautiful, Carol. You've always had the magic touch." Heart emoji. The heart emoji felt like a tiny dagger. She was a phantom limb of the family, amputated, but still sending phantom pains. They were all too polite, too steeped in 7 years of shared history, to simply cut her off. And she, it seemed, was more than happy to linger. One afternoon, I was having coffee with my best friend, Maya. Maya is the kind of friend who can smell bullshit from a mile away and has no qualms about calling it out. I relayed the whole story: the phone call, the Alex comment, the Instagram block. She took a long sip of her latte, her eyes narrowed. "Okay," she said, placing the cup down with a definitive click. "Let's break this down. This isn't a Sarah problem. This is a Carol problem." "What do you mean? Why, in God's name, did Carol feel the need to tell you any of that?" Maya asked, gesturing with her hands. "What was the endgame there? To make you feel secure? Because relaying a sob story from the ex where she calls your fiancé her Alex is not exactly a confidence booster." She praised Sarah, called her a darling girl, and then tried to backpedal by saying his friends like you better. "That's not transparency, Chloe. That's triangulation. She's creating drama, consciously or not." I'd been so focused on Sarah, I hadn't really considered Carol's motives. "I think she was just clumsy," I defended weakly. "She likes me. I know she does." "Oh, I'm sure she does," Maya said. "But she also had a quasi-daughter-in-law for 7 years. That's a long habit to break. She's probably processing her own sense of loss and loyalty, and she's using you as a sounding board, which is completely unfair. Her job is to be a firewall, to protect you and Alex from this kind of nonsense. Instead, she opened the door and let the crazy in." Maya's words resonated. The way Carol had delivered the news was a little too theatrical. There was a part of her, maybe, that enjoyed being at the center of the story, the beloved matriarch for whom 2 women were vying. It was an uncomfortable thought, but it had the ring of truth. "So what do I do?" I asked, feeling a fresh wave of anxiety. "You do nothing," Maya said firmly. "You don't engage. You live your happy, beautiful life with your amazing fiancé. You let Carol know, subtly, that you don't need a play-by-play of Sarah's emotional breakdowns. Next time she brings it up, you say, 'You know, Carol, Alex and I are so focused on our future, I'd rather not dwell on the past. Full stop. Change the subject.'" She leaned forward, her expression serious. "And as for the wedding, you hold your head high. You be the radiant, confident, happy fiancé. You are the reality. She is the ghost. Ghosts only have power if you let them haunt you." I left that coffee feeling armed, like Maya had handed me a shield and a sword. She was right. I couldn't control Sarah's actions or Carol's clumsiness, but I could control my own reactions. I could choose not to be haunted. The resolve lasted for a solid 48 hours. Then, on Sunday, we went to Carol's for dinner. It was a lovely evening. Alex's dad, Tom, grilled steaks, and the smell of charcoal and sizzling meat filled the backyard. We sat on the patio, drinking wine and talking about the wedding plans. Carol was in her element, fussing over everyone, refilling glasses, bringing out bowls of salad and roasted potatoes. Everything was fine until Lisa, Alex's younger sister, brought up the wedding. "Oh my God, are you guys ready for Mike and Jess's wedding? It's going to be such a reunion," she said, her eyes bright. Lisa was a sweet girl, but not always the most tactful. "We're looking forward to it," Alex said smoothly, placing a hand on my knee under the table. A small, grounding gesture. "It'll be so weird seeing Sarah there," Lisa blurted out, and then immediately clapped a hand over her mouth. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I totally didn't mean to. Meat mouth." The air on the patio, which had been so light and festive, suddenly became thick and heavy. Tom cleared his throat and took a sudden, intense interest in the state of his steak. Carol shot Lisa a look that could curdle milk. "It's okay, Lisa," I said, forcing a smile that felt brittle. "It's not a secret she'll be there." "I know. But, Lisa groaned, dropping her hand. "It's just, she's been texting me, asking what I'm wearing, if I've seen you and Alex, how the wedding planning is going." My blood ran cold. So, she was gathering intelligence. Alex's hand tightened on my knee. "Lisa, you don't need to engage with that," he said, his voice low and firm. "You can just ignore her texts." "I know, but it's hard. She sends me pictures of her dog. It feels mean to just ghost her after all this time," Lisa lamented. "She was at my high school graduation, you know?" "We all know, honey," Carol said, jumping in to steer the conversation away from the iceberg. "But Chloe is right. It's fine. We are all adults. It will be a lovely wedding, and we will all be there to celebrate Mike and Jess. Now, who wants more potatoes?" The subject was changed, but the damage was done. The ghost was no longer just a whisper on the phone or a blocked profile on an app. She was an active presence, texting Alex's sister, embedding herself in the pre-wedding chatter, making her presence known before she even entered the room. On the drive home, the silence in the car was heavy. "I'm sorry about my sister," Alex said finally, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "She's always had the subtlety of a runaway train." "It's not her fault," I said, staring out at the passing streetlights. "It just confirms things." "Confirms what?" "That this isn't just in my head. Sarah is actively trying to stay involved. She's keeping tabs. It feels invasive." He pulled the car over to the side of the road, putting it in park. He turned to me, his face illuminated by the orange glow of a streetlight. "Chloe, look at me." I turned, my eyes meeting his. "None of it matters," he said with fierce certainty. "It doesn't matter if she texts my sister or comments on my mom's photos or hires a skywriter to declare her undying love. It does not matter. She is playing games in a league of her own, and we are not on the field. Do you understand? The only people in our world are you and me." He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, his touch gentle. "I am going to marry you. I am going to spend the rest of my life with you. I am going to love you until I'm old and gray and can't remember my own name. Sarah Jenkins is a footnote in a chapter that ended a long, long time ago. You are the rest of the book, the whole damn library." Tears pricked my eyes, blurring the streetlights into a hazy constellation. It was everything I needed to hear. He wasn't just reassuring me, he was arming me. He was reminding me of the truth. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay," he repeated, leaning in to kiss me. The kiss was a promise. It was a seal on the conversation, a final, definitive statement. And as we drove the rest of the way home, I held on to that feeling. I was the library. She was the footnote. But even footnotes have a way of drawing your eye, of pulling your attention down to the bottom of the page, making you wonder about the story that isn't being told. And the wedding was only 2 weeks away. The 2 weeks leading up to the wedding were a masterclass in compartmentalization. I would spend hours deep in the joyful minutiae of my own wedding planning, tasting cakes, interviewing photographers, arguing with Alex over whether a photo booth was essential or an extravagance, and I would feel completely, utterly secure. In those moments, Sarah Jenkins was less than a footnote. She was a forgotten word on a crumpled piece of paper in a different library, in a different city. But then, a quiet moment would come. I'd be waiting for the kettle to boil, or lying in bed unable to sleep, and the unease would creep back in. It was quieter now, less of a roaring fire and more of a pilot light, but it was still there, a low, constant hum of anxiety. I followed Maya's advice. I stopped my masochistic scrolling through tagged family photos. When Carol called and started a sentence with, "You'll never guess who I ran into at the grocery store," I politely but firmly cut her off. "That's nice, Carol. Hey, I wanted to ask your opinion on our flower arrangements." She got the message. The Sarah report, as Maya and I had started calling it, ceased. My focus shifted to the wedding itself. Not my wedding, but Mike and Jess's. It loomed. I planned my outfit with the precision of a military strategist. I wanted to look effortless, confident, and radiant. I wanted my appearance to broadcast a message. I am happy. I am secure. I am unbothered. It felt shallow, But in a situation where I had so little control, controlling my presentation felt like a small act of power. I settled on a deep emerald green silk dress that made my eyes pop and hugged my curves in all the right ways. When I tried it on for Alex, his jaw literally dropped. "Wow," he breathed. "You're going to be the most beautiful woman there." "Second most," I corrected him, smiling. "It's Jess's day." "Okay, tied for first," he conceded, pulling me into his arms. "You look incredible, Chloe." The night before the wedding, the pilot light of anxiety flared up again. I was lying in bed, Alex already fast asleep, and I was playing out every possible scenario in my head. Scenario A. The cold shoulder. She sees me, doesn't acknowledge me, and we spend the entire night pretending the other doesn't exist. This was the most likely, and in some ways, the most desirable outcome. Clean, simple, no drama. Scenario B. The passive-aggressive sweetness. She approaches me with a wide, bright smile. "You must be Chloe. It is so wonderful to finally meet you." Alex looks so happy. Every word a saccharin-coated dart. This was the most dangerous scenario, the one that would require the most emotional fortitude to navigate. Scenario C. The confrontation. Unlikely, but my anxious brain went there anyway. A tearful encounter in the bathroom. A dramatic scene near the bar. My stomach churned at the thought. "Stop it," I whispered to myself in the dark. I rolled over and focused on the steady rise and fall of Alex's back. I synchronized my breathing with his. In, out, in, out. "You are the library," I told myself. "He is with you. This is your reality." I fell asleep eventually, but my dreams were a tangled mess of crying women and blocked Instagram profiles. The day of the wedding arrived, bright and sunny, an offensively perfect day for a showdown. As I did my makeup, I felt like I was putting on armor. A little extra concealer under the eyes to hide the restless night. A waterproof mascara, just in case. A bold red lip, my war paint. Alex was a dream. He seemed to have no anxiety about the situation at all. He was genuinely excited to celebrate his friends. He saw Sarah not as a threat or a ghost, but as an old friend of the bride and groom who just happened to be his ex. His lack of concern was, in itself, the most reassuring thing in the world. Her power over him was zero. Therefore, her power over us was zero. I just had to believe it. We drove to the venue, a sprawling country club with manicured lawns and a grand ballroom. It was beautiful. We found our friends, hugged the groom, and got drinks. For the first hour, during the ceremony and the cocktail reception on the lawn, I managed to forget. I was just a guest at a wedding with my handsome fiancé, laughing with friends, enjoying the sunshine. Then, I saw her. We were walking from the lawn into the ballroom to find our seats. She was standing near the seating chart, her back to me. She was with a tall, sandy-haired man who must have been Mark, the good man. Sarah was wearing a pale blue dress. It was pretty, but safe. She turned slightly to say something to him, and I saw her face in profile. She was just a woman. A normal-looking woman with blonde hair tied in an elegant chignon. Not a monster. Not a villain. Just a person. My heart started hammering against my ribs anyway. Alex, bless his oblivious heart, hadn't even noticed her. He was busy talking to another one of his college buddies. I took a deep breath. Unbothered. Radiant. Confident. We found our table. We were seated with a group of Alex's friends, all of whom I knew and liked. It was a safe zone. From our vantage point, I could see her table across the room. She was seated with Jess's friends from high school. We were in separate orbits. This was good. The dinner service began. Speeches were made. The bride and groom had their first dance. Through it all, I was acutely aware of her. It was like having a radar for one specific person in a room of 200. I saw her laugh at something Mark said. I saw her dab her eyes with a napkin during the father of the bride's speech. I saw her look over towards our table once, her eyes scanning the group before quickly flitting away. She didn't meet my gaze. Alex and I danced. He spun me around, his hands warm and steady on my waist. "Having a good time?" he murmured into my ear, his lips brushing my skin. "The best," I said, and for that moment, I meant it. In his arms, on the dance floor, surrounded by the warm glow of fairy lights, she didn't exist. The inevitable, however, came, as it always does, at the bar. Later in the evening, Alex went to get us a fresh round of drinks. I was talking to one of the other wives at our table when I realized I'd left my clutch back on my chair. I excused myself and headed back to the table, which was now empty as everyone had migrated to the dance floor. As I picked up my purse, a voice behind me said, "That's a beautiful dress." I froze. I knew that voice. Or rather, I knew it had to be her. I turned around slowly. It was Sarah. She was standing a few feet away, holding a glass of champagne. Her smile was small and tight. Up close, I could see the fine lines around her eyes. She looked tired. This was it. Scenario B. The passive-aggressive assault. I braced myself. "Thank you," I said, my voice even. The bridesmaid dresses are a lovely color. A neutral, polite return of serve. "Jess has great taste," she said, taking a tiny sip of her drink. Her eyes weren't on me, but on the dance floor. where Alex was now laughing with the groom. "He looks happy," she said, her voice soft. There it was, the line, almost exactly as I had pictured it. It was a test, a subtle assertion of her knowledge of him, of her right to comment on his emotional state. She wasn't looking at me, but she was waiting for my reaction. I had a choice. I could be defensive. I could be cold. Or I could take the high road Maya had told me about. I could be the unbothered, confident reality. I turned my body to fully face her, a gesture that felt both open and commanding. I smiled, a genuine smile this time, not the brittle one I'd been practicing. "He is," I said. And then I delivered my own line, the one that had been forming in my subconscious for weeks. "We both are. It's amazing, finding that person who just makes everything lighter, isn't it?" I let the question hang in the air. It did three things at once. It agreed with her observation. It immediately put me on equal footing with him. "We are happy." And it threw the question back at her, forcing her to acknowledge her own relationship. The one with the good man, Mark. It was a gentle, polite, but unmistakable checkmate. Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second. Just a tiny twitch at the corner of her mouth, but I saw it. She had expected me to be flustered, or to give a simple, awkward thanks. She hadn't expected me to so smoothly reframe the conversation. "Yes," she said, her voice a little flatter now. "It is." She looked over at Mark, who was now talking to someone by the bar. "Well," she said, turning her attention back to me, "I should get back." "It was nice to meet you, Sarah," I said. The words were polite, but the subtext was clear. This is our first and last conversation on this topic. She just nodded, turned, and walked away without another word. I stood there for a moment, my heart still beating a little too fast, my clutch held tight in my hand. I hadn't won a battle. It wasn't a war, but I had held my ground. I had faced the ghost, and I hadn't flinched, and I had discovered that she wasn't a terrifying specter after all. She was just a sad woman, clinging to a story that was long over. Alex came back, handing me a glass of Prosecco. "Everything okay?" he asked, noticing the look on my face. "Everything is perfect," I said, and I clinked my glass against his. The rest of the night was a blur of dancing and laughter. I didn't see Sarah again, except for a glimpse of her and Mark leaving early. I felt a strange sense of release, as if a weight I didn't even realize I was carrying had been lifted from my shoulders. The drive home was quiet, but it was a comfortable, contented silence. The kind that exists between two people who are perfectly in sync. I had my head on Alex's shoulder, the window down, the cool night air rushing over my face. "So you talked to her," Alex said, his voice soft. It wasn't a question. "For a minute, at the bar. And it was fine," I said, lifting my head to look at him. "She told me you looked happy." He glanced at me, a small smile playing on his lips. "What did you say?" "I told her we both were." His smile widened. He reached over and took my hand, lacing his fingers through mine. "That's my girl," he said. "That's the woman I'm going to marry." He didn't need to know the details, the subtext, the strategic maneuvering of the conversation. All he needed to know was that I was okay, that we were okay, and we were more than okay. That night, lying in bed, the ceiling above me was just a ceiling again. A blank, white, blessedly empty canvas. The ghost had been exorcised. Not by Alex's reassurances, though they had helped. Not by my friend's advice, though it had been invaluable. But by me, by facing the source of my unease and realizing that it had no power over me. Sarah's call to Carol wasn't really about Alex. It was about her own life, her own choices, her own regrets. It was the desperate cry of someone who had taken a wrong turn and was trying to convince herself that her old path was still an option, a comforting fantasy to hold on to. Her blocking me on Instagram wasn't about me, it was about her inability to witness the reality of Alex's happiness, a reality that proved her fantasy was just that. Her whole performance was for an audience of one, herself. A few days later, I was scrolling through Instagram, my thumb moving lazily over pictures of my friends' brunches and babies. On a whim, I typed her name into the search bar again. Her profile was still private, but the message had changed. Follow. She had unblocked me. I stared at the button for a long moment. It felt like a final, small, pathetic white flag. An invitation, perhaps, to let her into my life, to let her be a spectator, a way for her to continue her low-stakes haunting. I thought about the woman I'd met at the wedding, the one with the tired eyes and the tight smile. I thought about her 2-year relationship with the good man. I hoped, for her sake, that she would learn to be happy with him. I hoped she would find her own library and stop trying to scribble notes in the margins of mine. And then I closed the app. I didn't follow her. I didn't block her. I did nothing. She was irrelevant. I looked across the living room at Alex, who was on the floor, trying to assemble a piece of IKEA furniture for our new home office, looking both frustrated and adorable. He looked up and caught my eye, his face breaking into a wide, luminous grin. The future. It was right there, solid, real, and laughing because he couldn't figure out which screw was which. The past was a closed book, and I had no desire to reread it. I was far too busy writing our own story.